Very pleased to be interviewing Chris Moschovitis and Anna Murray of TMGE Media. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Charlene.
So let's first start with your backgrounds. How did you get to where you are today? Who should we start with?
I started in news, in fact, in the 90s. I started in broadcast. And in the 90s, CD-ROMs were on the cover of Time magazine, not the internet. So I decided to make a move into the world of interactive media, and that pretty quickly transitioned into the world of the internet. And from there, we've been working with media and media clients who have been making the transition from analog to the internet.
And what did you do in broadcasting, in news?
I was working as a low-level producer at ABC, World News Tonight, and the satellite news feed service News One.
And Chris, what is your background?
My background is from the hard sciences. I have degrees in physics and mathematics and computer science, but eventually I was involved in computer science from the very early on. I taught computer science. Eventually that led me through a career in academia by being academic director at Pratt Institute. Eventually that led me to the O'Connor Group, where I was vice president for computing, and that right after that I started my own company on the principle that small and medium-sized firms did not and could not get the right type of strategic support and operational support that larger companies had. So that was the foundation of the company about 24 years ago.
So the combination of your backgrounds actually makes you well positioned to work with big data sets in the media sector. Can you talk a little bit about some of the data sets you've been working with?
Yeah, we have had, through our experience in the media sector, we have always had hands-on manipulation of a lot of data that's coming in, either through directly from the audience or aggregated to form an audience set. Now, in 2012, we consider this age to truly be the big data age. And the big data age, I'd like to say that it is going to lead into the truly first wave of intelligent processing of data information. We will be able to do everything from behavioral analysis to targeting demographics, eventually really customizing media directly to specific audiences, because we now have the processing power and the intelligence behind it to ask and analyze the right questions about the data sets.
You know, it's funny, I think that customers are struggling with big data and even with what big data means. So, in other words, I think that, there's some very interesting stuff coming out of Columbia Journalism, where we're now starting to do, big data journalism and crunching numbers on the journalism side, like stop and frisk numbers. So journalists are getting into sort of crunching those kind of numbers and coming up with stories based on big data. So that's some interesting work. And yet on the other hand, I think that a lot of customers, advertising customers, are struggling with, I don't know what came before, maybe we could call it little data. They were really having a hard time even getting to understand how that data would be actionable. And now, I think that everyone is, like with many things, everyone is fascinated with big data, but understanding exactly how they're going to use it and what it means to their business, I think people are really struggling with it. So I think it's a term that everyone's interested in, but I don't think a lot of folks have really wrapped their heads around how it's going to be meaningful for their businesses.
It is a time of transition. It is a time of transition because from a computing point of view, the capacity is there and the collection capability is there, and the ability to process big data is there. From a business point of view, we are not sure, or at least a lot of the clients that we're dealing with are not sure about what the right questions are to ask about big data. At the end of the day, though, there is no question that big data, the analysis of the big data, the processing of the big data, and the shaping of big data is going to be the incubator for the next generation of media. The next generation of media will be led fundamentally by the big data analysis, the metrics it provides, and even the behavioral targeting that it enables.
Are there some truisms to working with big data? Are there rules and sort of set precepts, or is each big data set its own set of unique challenges?
Well, there is a very vast universe of what we're calling big data. There is a lot of regulation around it. If big data is about individual and individual behavior vis-a-vis privacy and confidentiality and so on and so forth, and on the other hand of the spectrum, there is big data that is just straight up numbers that are coming in directly from the consumption of media, which are not regulated. So the landscape, we believe, is all over the place. Analyzing it and trying to make coherent sense out of it is like looking at an ocean. So at a very high altitude, the ocean looks like a very manageable ecosystem, but the minute that you start getting to the ocean up close and personal, you realize that there is currents, you realize that there is many different species living and existing in it in very, very different ways. So I think it matters as to what exactly it is that you're looking at, what are you trying to get out of it, and how you want to harvest the information.